Bonjour! Welcome to KJ and Tony Move to France.
In today's video, we're going to be sharing some need-to-know information on your trip to Paris, as well as some lesser-known tips that you may find helpful.
But before we do that, I want to just take a moment to say thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to everyone who sent me emails and posted comments relative to my dad's stroke that he experienced a couple of weeks ago. He actually came home from rehab yesterday and he's doing really, really well. So thank you so much for everyone for your support.
And I think that's the fact that he's doing so well has a lot to do with his workout regimen. He works out every day at 85 years old and hits tennis balls 3 times a week and rides a bike. He is doing really well, in large part because of his workout routine.
Yeah, the doctor said that because he is in such great physical condition for his age, that really made a huge difference relative to the impact of the stroke that he had. So definitely exercise is key. Get out there and do your exercises. So are you ready to talk about Paris?
I'm ready.
All right, let's go. Okay, before we get into the 7 specific tips that we're going to share with you today, which are lesser known facts about Paris, that a lot of which I wasn't aware of before, and I came across doing my own research because, as you may know, we are going back to Paris on October 1st for 2 weeks, and that's what I do. I love to prepare for the trip by watching videos, much like maybe what you're doing right now, or researching articles about Paris. And I looked for, in these various articles, I think I researched like 10 different articles. I looked for facts that they were giving in the article that weren't the ones that most people talk about. And the ones that most people talk about are a part of our first video. We have another video where we shared 10 tips on visiting Paris. And those 10 tips, just so you know, you can of course go and watch the video for more information, but I'm just going to run through them really quickly, are number 1, bring comfortable shoes. Number 2, take a walking tour or a few walking tours. They're excellent. Number 3, visit during the shoulder season. Number 4, plan out where you're going to stay relative to, that's why doing the research in advance is great, because then you can find out the different places you want to visit and then pick your hotel based upon those places that you really want to see, which, by the way, you may want to check out our 20 arrondissements video where we share with you and talk about all the different various attractions located in the different arrondissements. You'll also want to bring a European plug adapter to convert, and 0 is the first floor. The first floor is the second floor. Students under 26 years old are free, but you must remember to bring your student ID. They will ask for it, like when you go to various monuments. Public restrooms are not free. Most internet is free, and remember to say bonjour. So those are the 10 that we shared with you in the last video, but like I said, today we are going to share with you some lesser known facts about Paris. Tip number 1. Tip number 1 is to always carry some euro change with you at all times, because the first paper euro is the 5 euro. So there's the 1 euro and the 2 euro are coins, and you will need those coins, whether it's for a restroom, because as we previously shared, restrooms are generally not free in Paris, especially when you go to the mall and places like that. You will have to pay to use the restroom. So you always want to make sure that you have some coins on you at all times.
So if you use your paper money to buy something and you get coins as change, don't just spend them to get rid of them. Keep them because you'll need them for these kinds of things. And you might see a good musician on the street that you might want to throw some euros into his basket. So it's always a good reason to have some euros.
Absolutely.
Tip number 2. If you're lucky enough to be able to plan your trip covering a weekend, and that weekend happens to be the first weekend of the month, the first Sunday of the month, museums in Paris are free on the first Sunday of the month. So don't let that go to waste. Museums can be expensive, and although something like the Louvre might be very crowded on a Sunday, you might be going to some of the other museums and they're free the first Sunday of the month.
Unfortunately, we did not know this
Right.
until after we booked our trip. And I at first was excited thinking, oh, we're going to be there the first Sunday of the month. And then Tony pointed out to me that actually the first Sunday of the month is the 1st and we are flying on the 1st. So we will not be able to take advantage of that ourselves, unfortunately, but you may be able to. Tip number 3. Tip number 3 is to be sure to take advantage of all of the wonderful markets that are available in Paris. There is literally a market that is held every single day somewhere in Paris, on any given day.
And I bet you could even find out that there's more than one every day.
Right, sure. They are commonly held. However, on Saturdays and Sundays, you absolutely can find more than one market on a Saturday and a Sunday throughout Paris. And in order to find out where they are and when they're being held, Tony has this great resource. He has this book.
It's called The Pocket Paris. It's $13.99. You can get it from Amazon. And you can pinpoint your hotel in here, and it'll tell you within walking distance every market, every museum, everything about Paris. It's an unbelievable resource. It's easy to carry, and it's up to date. It's post-COVID. So Amazon, $13.99.
I'll put a link in the description. It's a wonderful book. We take it with us whenever we go. So looking through that book and finding the different markets, being prepared on your trip to take advantage of all of the wonderful markets that they have there.
By the way, the book also explains to you if you're going somewhere which subway to take if you want to take mass transit. So the book is good for a lot of different things.
Really great resource.
Okay, tip number 4 has to do with vintage shops. If you're into shopping in vintage type shops, which KJ is, Paris has tons of them. But the Marais section of Paris is an area that is well known for vintage shops, and you can find, basically neighborhoods with them there. So if vintage shops are your thing, the Marais section is the place to be.
Tip number 5. Tip number 5 is that you don't have to tip like you would say you're from the United States. The way that we generally are expected to tip in the United States is 20%, right? 10, 15, 20%. Tipping is not the same in Paris or in France in general as it is in the US, yet tipping is very much appreciated. So when Tony and I first learned this, we first learned this the very first time we went to Paris, where we were tipping and we were next to a couple who's from the US, and they were explaining to us that you don't tip the way you do in the US, and that if you really enjoyed your meal, you might tip a few euros.
Right.
But it wouldn't be to the extent that we normally would tip.
And if you remember that day, I tried to tip normally what was normal for me, and the waiter wouldn't take it. He said, no, that's too much.
He said it was too much, yes. So you don't have to tip in Paris, but it is very much appreciated by the wait staff when you do. So definitely tipping. I think I read in one of the articles that I was reviewing that 10% is even becoming the norm. I think it's becoming more and more of a norm in France than it used to be.
And I think tipping there is more done in cash than if you're paying with a credit card. They much prefer that if, again, having that change in your change purse or your pocket, having a few euros to leave for them.
Yeah.
Okay, tip number 6 is a tip that we saw in not many articles.
Only one article.
Only one. And it's something that if you think about makes sense, but I never thought of it. Be prepared for more intense eye contact. French people, when they talk to you, are looking right at you. They're not glancing away like we're used to. They look right at you. So be prepared for that. Don't think they're trying to intimidate you. It's just the way they are.
It's a part of the culture. And this leads to tip number 7, which I think is, I'd like to make it less sort of like United States based, because what the tip is, and again, this is one that I read in only one of the articles. So I went through all these articles and I tried to pick out these like lesser known facts that I haven't necessarily perhaps heard of before. This one, however, we've heard different sort of veins of this as we've spent time in France and we're learning about the culture. And that is to not be so American. And I think this is more about culture. This is more about being prepared for the cultural differences, and that there are different ways in which the French go about a lot of things. And all I can say about this one in particular, because it does identify Americans, right? It says, don't be so American. What we've heard is that Americans typically tend to be loud, that we, the French talk in more they talk fast, right? That's for sure. But they talk in more softer tones than Americans generally do. And you'll pretty much stand out.
You'll probably draw attention to yourself that you really would rather not. So just don't get loud and you'll be fine. For me, it's leaving my Americanism at the American border as we cross the ocean. There's a lot of things that I do as an American that can be seen as aggressive in France. And so I try to kind of recede my personality back a little bit and try not to be loud and try to act with some grace.
And there was a comment that was left by one of our viewers that speaks to this as well, I think, is this perception that the French are rude, and they're not rude as much as we perceive that. Like we perceive sort of the way that they are, their approach to life, as being rude, when that's not really their intention at all.
I know that for me, every time I've asked for help, it's been given. Yeah. I've never had someone be rude to me, say no to me, I can't help you.
Never.
But I say bonjour when I go in a store. I say please. I say merci when they do something for me. And so it's just a matter of following the French culture of doing things right.
Right. Being respectful of their culture and their beliefs, and trying to learn as much as you can beforehand so that you can know the norms of the culture.
That's it for today's video.
We hope you found these tips to be helpful.
And we'll see you next week.
A bientôt.
Au revoir.